Welcome to the Telltales Podcast, where we discuss cash flow and its pivotal role in investing. I'm Mike Nicoletti.
And I'm Jason Wallace. Along with our co-host Hunt Lawrence, aka Mr. Cashflow, we're here to explore how cash flow drives the economy and investment performance.
And don't forget to join our email list at telltales.us to get the cash flow memo. It's about 20 pages covering 80 companies, U.S. government's finances, and the energy sector.
It's like having a masterclass on investing in your inbox every week.
The following conversation is intended for informational purposes only. You should always do your own work to determine if an investment is suitable for you.
Here's Hunt.
Hi, here I am on the button at 3:30.
Yeah, right on time.
Exhibit C. I'm going to be quick on this because we got a lot to talk about with Apple, but I know I say it every Wednesday, but for those of you with Exhibit C in front of you, the growth in demand is quite controversial now. OPEC says 2.5 million barrels a day. The IEA, which is the entity based in Paris, says less than 1 million barrels a day. These numbers say 1.5 million barrels a day, which I think is pretty consistent with what happened in 23 and 22. 1.5 million barrels a day of growth with almost 4.5 of extra capacity. That's 3 years of growth. So if the Saudis ever decided to do market share because they were upset with people cheating on quotas, that there is some downside in oil. Now, last Sunday a week, I guess, not last Sunday, but the Sunday before, they had an OPEC Plus meeting, and the market sold off about $6 when they indicated in the meeting that the Saudis and UAE was going to add some production in the fall because they thought demand would be there. That $6 is now reversed. We're back, got about $3 of that back, but it is kind of poised on a knife edge in my view. Exhibit B, natural gas production. It was 104 last November, and it's hanging in there at 100. So the next time we sit down to renew or revise Exhibit B, the 103 average is going to have to come down. That means, it'll look better. And in fact, you can see at the bottom, gas pricing, the prompt price as of last week, the end of last week was 265. And that's up significantly. I think the prompt price in January through April averaged 220, and the 25 price is 355, and the 26 price is 390. So it's better. There is 500 or 600 Bs of extra gas storage, and hopefully that will, be chewed up by this hot weather. But that's an awful lot of storage in mid-June to chew up before the end of the injection season, which is October or late October. If there is no place to go with the production, you can expect some very low prices in September, but hopefully the heat will take care of that. No real comment on Exhibit A. I say every Wednesday that I think we can hope for is to try to stabilize the deficit at $1.5 trillion. You've had this substantial increase in interest cost. It's from before COVID, it was running, say, 350 billion. Now it's going to run, 800 billion or something. That not too much you can do about that. That whole other category, hopefully they can chip away at. Still means, I think, that interest rates will not decline to what we had after 0809. I think it'll be inflation plus 1.5 points or so. You would think that would mean lower stock market values, but that doesn't seem to be having much of an impact either. Anything to add, Mike or Jason?
I just add the FOMC statement today that it seems like until we see movement toward a 2% inflation rate, they don't intend to change the short-term rate.
Right. As we predicted last week, most of this week's 30 Minutes is going to be about Apple's approach to AI. Mike and I have been talking about 20 minutes each morning. Haven't had the chance to talk to Jason. Jason, your overall assessment of how this looks from an Apple stockholder point of view is neutral, positive, somewhat negative? How would you rate it?
I think it's fairly positive. We were looking at the number of phones in the market that are capable of running the new Apple Intelligence. As we kind of predicted that they're going to try to drive an upgrade cycle by only allowing this feature on the newest chipset. And really the limiting factor is memory, which I'll touch on that later. But it's only a couple percent, maybe 4% of Apple customers are on a phone today that can run this feature. So they might end up with a huge upgrade cycle this fall. But between now and then, who's going to buy a phone that doesn't have that capability? So, but I think they're in a great place.
Mike, you're on the same page?
Yeah, mostly. I mean, I think what they did is showed, I think the positive was that they didn't go to try to do something that was outside of their wheelhouse. They focused on developing a small model that fits on the phone that does stuff that other people can't do, and then leverage the power of the platform to be able to bring in external models. We expected this OpenAI partnership and then the potential for additional models to come online. They showed that. Now, I'll tell you, one thing was confusing about the presentation is that the assumption was maybe OpenAI was more baked into the Apple AI solution. Even as much as Elon Musk getting upset about the potential of having OpenAI built into the, having access to Apple OS would be a threat for enterprises. That's not correct. So I think that was maybe, adding that part with the OpenAI piece. They had a lot to cover, and it was a little surprising to me that they covered a lot of other stuff that wasn't that interesting and then slammed a bunch of the AI stuff into the end. Nonetheless, what they have is unique. They have access to all of your personal data, and their models will be able to take action within the iPhone with your relevant personal data. And that they're claiming to do it in a very secure and sensitive way. So I think that's probably demonstrates what Apple's best at doing. Partnering with OpenAI, our suspicion is that Apple's not paying anything for that. OpenAI is on the hook for doing all the free inferencing, and essentially it's a freemium scenario where people that sign up for the Plus or Pro features from OpenAI will, they'll access that through Apple, and Apple will gain a revenue share on that. So they're teeing that up. They've got Google that will likely sign on to a similar arrangement, and we'll see. I mean, it could become a meaningful part of their services business, and maybe important if that search revenue share starts to decline. So we'll see.
If I buy a iPhone 16 or an iPhone 15 Pros and I get to use the OpenAI language models for free, what does this do for Microsoft trying to collect $20 a month for Copilot?
Well, I think Microsoft's approach is more aligned to the enterprise. So where Apple is more of a personal experience, because it does have corporate customers, but most corporate customers are also Microsoft customers. So the corporate customer is more likely to purchase directly from Microsoft than they are directly from OpenAI in most cases, because similar to Apple's approach at the operating system level, having an action model that does a bunch of stuff, Microsoft has implemented Copilot across its suite of applications and Microsoft Windows. So it's more of a business versus consumer approach. And I guess the conclusion here is that maybe the majority of OpenAI's business is going to be consumer driven, at least through the Apple channel. It certainly will be.
Yeah, I think OpenAI is going to go more a freemium model. You can get ChatGPT 3.5 for free now, and then you pay for the 4 or the 4 Omni model. And maybe they keep pushing the boundaries on the new models, and the free one always stays at 3.5. So if you want larger context windows or better, more nuanced answers, you'll pay for that.
Yeah, and an interesting point is if you're using the APIs to access OpenAI, the cost for 3.5 is maybe 10% of the cost of 4.0. It's a substantial difference to be on the leading edge model. And as new generations of NVIDIA hardware come out, that cost of inference will actually go down pretty dramatically, especially on the older models.
How would OpenAI monetize things other than charge so much per month?
So their monetization paths are partly through Microsoft. They have some enterprise offerings, but most importantly, it's the APIs that they're providing. And people are using those APIs to build OpenAI's capabilities into their products. We'll see where all of that goes. It's still relatively early days, but most all software companies, if you're doing some sort of a B2B software, you're at least looking at ways that you can enhance your current product by bringing AI directly into the product. And that could be Salesforce, having something that helps you helps you generate a response to an email if you're in sales, doing emails back and forth with customers, or it could be in support where you're building a chatbot that helps answer customers' queries about how to use their website or whatever support functions you provide. So these things are all sort of happening. It's early, but the OpenAI play is essentially we're going to set up all the tools so that you guys can figure out how to use these best for your products. And it'll take some time before all that stuff's really baked.
Yeah, my worry is when it is baked, the cloud providers provide the same functionality and they drive the cost of that down to near zero. And then OpenAI not running their own data centers and not being a cloud hosting service, they're kind of pushed out.
Is that it? And by worry, you mean that there's these large language models eventually become sort of ubiquitous and don't actually drive the value?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the value is the data.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's why this Apple play makes a lot of sense for them, because you can capture a consumer where you can get $20 a month. You have to give up 30% of that to Apple probably, and a pretty good chunk to inference, but maybe your take home is $8 or $10. That's not too bad, and it's a huge market. And you could see OpenAI being cash flow positive in not too long if that captures a significant chunk of iPhone users.
Mm-hmm. Jason, do you think OpenAI should be a public company eventually?
I'd like for every company to be a public company.
Increase our opportunities.
I think Microsoft consumes them at some point. I think that's the likely path.
Right. How does Alphabet fare in all this?
We haven't seen normal internet search cannibalized by any of these language models yet. But really, technology doesn't take off until Apple adopts it. Usually they're not the first mover in any new technology, but once it hits the iPhone or any Apple product, then it really has adoption. So I think when a Siri type functionality coupled with ChatGPT can answer a lot of the questions that people would normally type into Google. I think at that point, if you can just speak it to a device that's in your pocket or on your desk or somewhere around you, and then it tells you the answer verbally, I think that's going to really put a dent in Google search.
Mm-hmm. Will Google counter with their own speaking, AI capability or language capability?
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see what kind of phones, the Google Pixel phones, are released in the future, but I fully expect it. They're not going to, what Apple's released is less a language model, more an action model. We talked about it with that Rabbit device in the past. Taking action for the user is going to be, the first step towards kind of a digital assistant. And if your phone doesn't have that functionality in it, people are not going to buy it. So I think Google's going to have to step up and do this.
Well, also remember that Google will likely be providing Gemini as an alternative to OpenAI's ChatGPT. And one could probably assume that Google and Apple were negotiating the terms of that deal to make maybe Google the first one instead of OpenAI. And maybe Google wasn't as willing to give up the cost of inference as Apple or as OpenAI was.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't be surprised to see Gemini available on the iPhone, potentially even before the iPhone 16 launches.
Jason and Mike, we had a pretty thorough discussion on these four lead companies on page one. What have we not covered?
Not on page one, but I think some interesting news out of Oracle last night was Larry Ellison said that they're building a massive data center, a new data center. It's going to be entirely populated with NVIDIA chips. It's going to perform AI training. And they said they pre-sold half the capacity to Microsoft. So I wonder if a part of that is Microsoft and OpenAI secured the deal with Apple. They're going to have to come up with a lot more compute to handle all the queries from all the iPhone users. They're shifting around where that compute happens, and now they're going to have to rent a large amount of GPU space from Oracle to do their training outside of their own data centers.
Where will Oracle locate that facility, do you think?
I don't know. That's something to look into.
We know that xAI is behind this big facility being built in Memphis. And it sounds like the scale of that is what Oracle is going to try to do.
Right.
I don't know which location they pick.
Mike and I were talking earlier today that it's kind of interesting that Larry Ellison's inserted himself into the AI supply chain, securing the deal with NVIDIA and then getting kind of preferential access to NVIDIA chips. And now he's the one providing GPU compute to Microsoft and the other hyperscalers.
Yeah, not a big stretch of the imagination, because remember, Larry Ellison probably has better relations with the rest of the tech world than anybody else. So you could see him placing the 2-year out bet, doing the deal with NVIDIA, establishing some larger data centers, and being ready to realize basically what's going to happen is the choke point will be data centers.
Right.
It may not even be NVIDIA GPUs. It'll be places that you can actually hook them up. So there's actually an article in the paper today, I think it was, about some of these crypto miners have a weirdly beneficial position because they've had these interconnects already. They already draw a lot of power. And if there's a scarcity for the ability to get the interconnect, do they get acquired, at or above their net asset value? Because a lot of them trade actually apparently below net asset value. So,
Yeah, no, there's some potential there. I can tell you from a Yorktown point of view, getting power in from a provider, like for example this XAI project in Tennessee, where Tennessee Valley Authority, TVA, would be providing power. It can take a couple of years for a large utility like TVA to be able to get the equipment to provide power to that facility. So this is an interesting development, because whether you're XAI or Oracle, you want it yesterday. You don't want to wait for it. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out.
Okay, let's take a quick break for a message from Oakcliff Sailing.
Hi, I'm David Hervey.
Hi, I'm Kate Mattiello.
We've been training here at Oakcliff. I've been training on the 49er here, working a lot, just getting better. It was my first time sailing the 49er. Missed the Acorn program. I've gotten a lot better, and I'm hoping to start an Olympic campaign with it if I can, get my hands on a boat. But
I've been working on a lot of the basics, and I've really been focusing on my trapeze and my foot placement during maneuvers, and I hope to eventually start my Olympic campaign.
And now, back to the show.
While we're on page 2, Jason, anything positive, negative about Salesforce, ServiceNow, and Snowflake?
Negative. Let's go negative. There's a hack related to data sets out of Snowflake. It's not entirely clear how it was perpetrated, but there's kind of two sides of the story. One side is someone took a very long, 3-year-long approach to gathering passwords to Snowflake customers, and then about 2 months ago accessed the Snowflake databases of roughly 160 of their customers and pulled the data out with the idea to extort those companies before they share or sell that data.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. Some of them, like Santander Bank, Ticketmaster, Advanced Auto Parts, were some of those companies. So they're still trying to unravel it. We're trying to get to the bottom of it if it affects them, right? So if the hack really was really of Snowflake's customers and not Snowflake itself, that's one thing. Affecting that many Snowflake customers, it seems like it might be tied to one specific vulnerability at Snowflake. And digging around in that, we stumbled on some analysis that is a sales engineer might have been hacked that had access to some sample data from all those customers, and that was the vulnerability to get that. So we're still looking, but
yeah, I think I would assume that that's actually what happened, right? But the sales engineer, and this is critical to their go-to-market and their sales model. So the sales engineer will go into a customer and as part of an upsell or whatever, say, hey, let's pull a bunch of your data into a demo environment and I can help show you what you can do there. The way that they're doing this, apparently, for this hack not to have gone through Snowflake, is for the company to set up the user account, a separate user account for the sales engineer. So it's not actually domiciled within Snowflake. They're going through the normal channel, but being granted probably full access to this customer data set. And then the big error is not setting up multi-factor authentication on the part of the sales engineer. So the really scary part is how much does this slow down Snowflake's sales process? Because if this was like a kind of a quick way to get around some of the process requirements when you're engaging a Fortune 500 company, for example, you potentially are changing that, and you might add months to a sales cycle. The flip side is the stock got beat up pretty bad on it, and we still like the software stack and its relevance going forward. So the question is, can you find will it get cheap enough that it'll be worth buying some here?
Yeah, yeah, it's reputational damage. The fix is really trivial. You you enable two-factor authentication.
Well, the fix isn't just trivial. Really, everybody listening to this call or podcast have two-factor authentication set up on everything. I mean, everybody offers it now, but it is optional in most cases. So two-factor will, certainly improve your security situation.
Right. We're down to 5 minutes. We've been all the news and NVIDIA and Apple and other AI activity. We're leaving out healthcare. Do we have any healthcare news for the last few minutes of this session?
Oh, what about Celsius?
If you count that in healthcare.
Yeah.
They participate in healthcare conferences from time to time, so I call it.
They do. They've been impacted recently from a couple reports of the first one was slowing growth. So the industry monitors Nielsen sales data, which comes on a 2-week cycle. And for this past, the report that came out 2 weeks ago, we're expecting another one tomorrow, but it showed Celsius growth flatlining. I suspect it's more to do with how Nielsen, a change Nielsen made in how they're calculating sales in one of the channels. And the reason I say that is Red Bull sales growth was the highest of any company's sales growth week over week. And everyone else in the industry was flat or down, including Celsius. So I think it was a hiccup in the way Nielsen gathers the data. But due to that, some analyst reports came out and said Celsius growth has slowed. So something we're keeping our eye on.
The weekly data is not as useful as the month over month data, we think. So,
right.
Jason, didn't Lilly have an announcement of some trial results for some Alzheimer's medicine?
They did. I haven't looked at the data, but the headline is it's more effective than the currently approved therapy. So that's positive. I think the bar for the current therapy was set pretty low. We've discussed a kind of default approval on that, so that there is an option. Because,
Jason, do you know? Do they use Lantheus's test for tau proteins in this one?
I don't know that.
Yeah. All I know is that drug is designed to remove amyloid plaque buildup, so maybe it doesn't. But one of the things we like about Lantheus is one of their non-fully approved tests will measure tau protein tangles, which is another method that something they're using to measure progression of the disease.
Yeah, because that's what you do to measure how the medicine's working, I guess.
Right, yeah. No other way to really get in there and find out.
Yeah. Anything more on the Vertex pain medicine?
They've started their rolling submission to the FDA of their data, so they're providing results there, and hopefully by the end of the year we'll hear something out of the FDA.
Thanks to Jason and people like Larry Ellison, things move a lot faster in chips and software than they do in healthcare, don't they?
Definitely. But that's by design. We don't want experimental drugs pushed to the population, causing harm.
Just in the minute or two remaining, NVIDIA news this week. I guess Jensen took up residence in Taipei and became kind of almost like a Taylor Swift figure in Taipei.
Yeah, rock star status, I think.
Rock star status, yeah.
Yeah, I saw him signing signatures. I'll leave it at that.
10-for-1 stock split.
Oh
Any reason, you think?
Oh yeah, that's a good point. They did it 10 for 1. And the question is, why would they do that? Well, maybe because they're teeing up for inclusion in the Dow.
Yeah. That's a lot of shares outstanding. They had 2.4 billion, so now they have 24 billion shares outstanding. If we turn back to page 1, that tops everyone in terms of number of shares outstanding. I mean, Apple has 15 billion, Amazon has 10, Alphabet has 12. So Jensen, who seems very ambitious, now has more shares outstanding than anyone else. TSMC does those monthly reports, which you like, Jason, and each month they seem to be improving over the prior month.
Yeah, obviously the AI demand's not slowing down, and then there's a pickup in mobile phone chips and a resurgence in PCs.
Right.
So, and especially if there's a huge iPhone upgrade cycle, that'll be a big boost to chip production.
Well, and if we see a shift to ARM-based PC chips, that's just drawing more against.
Yeah, we haven't talked about that, but there's a lot of movement away from x86, which is Intel and AMD.
Right. Next week, we're going to talk about, well, we'll see. It's 7 days away, but we're probably going to get into streaming and sports. And this weekend, I'm going to try to update page 4, 5, and 6. So in terms of coming attractions, the NBA has been parsing out who's going to carry their events. And the leaders in the clubhouse seem to be Comcast and Disney. So that'll be worthwhile to get into next week. In the meantime, everyone stay well and be healthy. And we'll talk to you in 7 days. Take care.
The views expressed on this podcast are the hosts alone and do not constitute an offer to sell or a recommendation to purchase or a solicitation of an offer to buy any security nor a recommendation for any investment product or service. While certain information contained herein has been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, neither the hosts nor any of their employers or their affiliates have independently verified this information, and its accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Accordingly, no representation or warranty, expressed or implied, is made as to, and no reliance should be placed on, the fairness, accuracy, timeliness, or completeness of this information. The hosts and all employers and their affiliated persons assume no liability for this information and no obligation to update the information or analysis contained herein in the future and may or may not hold positions in the securities mentioned.